Good morning. It's a brand new week and should be a good one. Looking forward to all the things that we got going on. It's the week before July 4th, the holidays. So for those of you that kind of get that off, I think you're off on Monday probably, but it's going to be should be a good weekend. Hope your weekend. This one was good. Man, we had a great one. Just enjoyed a little bit of relaxation, lots of work as well, and family. So it was good. Tammy's family all gathered, and her brothers and her brother and all her sisters, and just a ton of people. And just a great reminder of the importance of family and bloodline and what it means to be a family, to lean in toward each other, to draw strength from each other. We tend to lose that in America, and we're careless with our families, and we allow them to be fractured and everything else. But the generational thing, man, it's just something powerful about seeing generations together in one roof and looking at each other. So we had a great time, and looking forward to the week ahead. We looking for a car. It's always one of those deals that you don't like doing, but we at that point now where we have to have one. So seeing how the other one kind of the engine shot on it. So here we go, right? And so we'll be spending some week doing that, and got some time that we're investing in this ULA app that Tammy and I partnered with, and really excited about the journey with that and the power of that. And so I'm trying to expose as many people to that app as we can, and I'll put a link in the bottom. You should check it out and just see if it works for you. It's a great tool. It's a lifestyle platform of really just helping you find balance in 7 areas and growth. And so it's making us more intentional in several areas, me and Tam. And so we're excited about that. So enough about that. Let's jump into some truth in the Gospel of Mark. And here we go, right? We are in the very last day before Jesus' crucifixion. So we have been in Jerusalem, or rather in Bethany, in an upper room where we are experiencing Jesus and his disciples and the intimacy that took place. So we've already made our way through the particulars of what happened up there in the upper room, the conversations, the teachings that John spoke about. We didn't go through them. I encourage you to read those if you remember. And so we saw that. We saw the conversation of who's the greatest, and they're still wrestling with that whole thing. And then we saw where they actually ate the meal. It was the establishment of the new covenant. The Passover really symbolized an old covenant. The new covenant is that it is now communion, right? That the wafer and the bread signifies the body of Christ. The wine signifies the blood of Christ. It is the once-for-all sacrifice. And so as often as we eat and drink, we remind ourselves of that event that took place there and remember him, that he's coming back for us. So it's a powerful concept. Now, they sang a hymn, and they made their way to the garden in Gethsemane. Now, it's on the way to Jerusalem. In fact, the scriptures say that they often gathered there in that garden. It's kind of a remote area. Whether there was a barn of some sort or whatever, it was an olive garden, and so there they would meet. Whether someone owned it, it was normal in those days to have a house kind of in the city with no area for a garden, and then you would have some additional space, and people would share gardens or whatever, more like that kind of a deal. So the Garden of Gethsemane would have been something like that. And so whether there was a shelter there, because sometimes people would go and they would work their garden and they may stay underneath a shelter like a lean-to for, like you would if you were hiking or camping on a trail. And so there could have been something like that. But for whatever reason, they're in the garden, and they have gone there several times, which is why Judas already knew that would be where they would be, because that was their favorite spot, I guess, if you will, to hang out, just exclusive. And so they would go there, and that's where they are. So they're now on their way to that, and so Jesus. Let me get to where we are. So they sung a hymn, and they went out to the Mount of Olives. So they're now in the Garden of Gethsemane, and on that journey, Jesus begins to speak to them, and then he begins to go and pray. So he has said this uh, earlier, which Luke records and John and Mark doesn't. He said he looks at Peter and he said, and it's probably in this same context because there's a conversation that takes place, and we're only seeing a portion of it in Mark. But Jesus looks at Peter and he says, Simon Peter. He calls him not by the name that he had given to him, but by his surname, Simon. He says, Simon, Simon, Satan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat. So there's this clear reminder that Satan is, there's two things about that. Satan is relentless of wanting to destroy God's people. Relentless with that. He comes to steal, kill, and to destroy. You never can make a deal with the devil. The devil will never compromise. The devil will never not sin. He is all about the destruction of everything that has to do with the Most High God being the Messiah, you and me, and anything else. He just wants sheer destruction. And so he has gone to heaven and he has demanded permission. Now, that's a powerful oxymoron because to demand something means you have authority to demand that. But he knows as he stands before the Most High, like he did with Job. Well, what about Job? I'm roaming the earth trying to find someone. And so there's that conversation in heaven. And so here it is. He has demanded permission. You've got to let me do what I want to with Peter. So here's what we know. Satan is not omnipotent. Satan is not omnipresent. And he's not all powerful. He has to submit to the Most High God. Right now, God has allowed him to have free reign for the most part, but he has to ask permission for those things. And so this is what he says there. Now, this conversation came right after Jesus says, "Hey, I'm going away, and where I'm going, you can't come." And John would add that he would say, "Hey, let not your heart be troubled. I'm going to prepare a place for you. I'm coming to return to bring you with me." And so this is that area of the conversation. He's given them a new commandment. I want you to love one another as I've loved you. The whole world's going to know you're mine because you guys love each other. So let's quit talking about who's the greatest. Let's draw in. Let's love each other. And Peter then says, "Well, Lord, where are you going? I mean, I don't get this. Where are you going?" And Peter will say in other passages, I'm never going to leave you. And so we pick up this conversation, having kind of had that as a background. They're on their way to the garden, or they are already there at this point. And it says this, "You will fall away," Jesus told them. "For it is written," and this is written in Zechariah chapter 13, "I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered." Now, Zechariah prophesied that there would come a moment when the chief shepherd would be struck down and everyone would scatter. He says, look, you're going to fall away. This is going to happen. You're going to fail here. And then he says, "But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter declared, "Even if all fall away, Lord, I'm not going to do that. Not me. I'm not doing it." "Truly, I tell you," Jesus says, "today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows, twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the others are going, "We won't either. We won't either." Except Jesus knew. And they did. And so he's mindful of how we're made. He's mindful of our frailty. Not only that, he himself is just deeply distressed about what's going on, and we're getting ready to move into that. But I want us to see the contrast of that one concept, that they're so confident, they're pridefully arrogant, not knowing the schemes of the evil one, and to see the harsh reality of what they're doing, what they will be doing to Jesus when they take him, will send sheer terror into them, and they will all flee. The only one that we have recorded that will actually be there at the crucifixion is John. All the others scattered. The women and John, that's who you see at the crucifixion. The others all fled. And so God's mindful of that, right? I mean, you and me will fail him. The goal is that we not sin. That's why John And First John writes, I write to you, my children, that you sin not. But if you do, know that you have an advocate before the Father, right? And so it's just important to understand that we strive for perfection, but even in this life, we won't attain it. I mean, it's just the old sinful man is just brutal, right? And so we want to trust. We want to believe. Lord, help our unbelief, right? That's our prayer. That should be what we pray. Now, let's move on in the context, because I want to get through this today. He took Peter and James and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. So just understand that Jesus is getting to this point, and he knows his hour is like here now, not hour soon, but it's here. He's going to be arrested in a matter of minutes, and so he's deeply distressed, deeply troubled. Isaiah 53 says that he was a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief. There's so many times through the scriptures Jesus grieves for them because they didn't have faith, and he looks over the city and he says, man, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I wanted to bring you in. When he saw the rich young ruler, he looked at him moved with compassion. When Lazarus was in the grave and he saw the brutality of death and what it does to all of those who are alive and living on this, Jesus wept. So we understand that he's got that. And so he's at this garden retreat, and he's given these instructions, and he's saying, he says to them, Luke 24, before he goes to pray, he says to them, hey, pray that you don't enter into temptation. So they're going to fail. They're going to pray. They're going to fail. This is what's going to happen. Now, very distressed, very troubled, grieved to the point of death. And listen, this is overwhelming to him. And you say, what is it? What is overwhelming to him? Because here, if we're not careful, we think, well, it's the death. He just doesn't want to. He don't want to die. That's not what it is. He said, I came to do that. I came to die. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. See, this was not Jesus is a wimp, and all of a sudden the reality of death is there, and he's afraid. There's something deeper than that, because it says, my sorrow is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And he said to them, stay here and keep watch. And so this whole, he's engulfed. That's what that word means. He is engulfed with this sorrow. What would cause him to do that? I think several things. One, he's never known sin, right? He who knew no sin, what happened to him? He became sin for us. So there's the reality here for him that he doesn't know sin. He's acquainted with it by seeing others, yet he himself has not sinned. He's been tempted like all of us in every way, but he didn't succumb to it. So he doesn't know sin in that degree. But here, he who knew no sin is about to become sin. And the sorrow of knowing the reality of what that means and what that brings is what's weighing him down. He's never known the wrath of God. Never. In the history of eternity, and even as a man having laid down his godliness, Paul told the Philippian church that he didn't regard equality as something with God to be grasped, and he laid aside his deity, and he became a man. So he's fully man, but he is fully God. He's never experienced the wrath of God, yet this is what he's about to experience. So the sin of the world is going to be laid on him. That's what Isaiah says, right? And then he will be the wrath of God. Then he becomes the sacrifice, the once for all sacrifice. So he lays on this altar, and the wrath of God is going to come down on him, and he will feel that. And this is his sorrow. This is his grief. He's never either known separation from the Father, but for that moment, there will be separation. For the Father can't look upon the sin that has been laid on him. And so there's this deal. So he's not a sinner. He's a sin bearer. He who knew no sin became sin for us. It got so bad that Luke tells us that an angel from heaven appeared to strengthen him. And he goes on to say that he sweat great drops of blood. So here in this moment as he's praying, and he's engulfed in this grief and sorrow of what it's like, because he knows he's about to endure uh, what for all of us would be an eternity of suffering. Those who don't know Christ, He will endure that eternity of suffering for those of us that do know Christ. And so this is that moment. And if we don't grab it, we miss what's taking place. This is not a fearful man afraid to die. This is a God man who has never known separation from God, the wrath of God, or the embracement of sin. And he is about to experience all of that, and he knows that clearly. And so he is grieved so much that literally this stress has produced these things in his brain, so that he begins to seep blood out of his pores, and an angel comes and strengthens him. That amazes me. That I mean, an angel from heaven has the ability to strengthen the Son of Man, but that's what's going on now. He goes on down. He says, going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed, if possible, that the hour might pass from him. And so he says this, Abba, Father, Daddy, oh, God, oh, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me. Are we talking about the cup of death? No. You know what is familiar throughout the scriptures, though, and what is spoken of, and it's spoken of in the Psalms, in Isaiah, in Jeremiah, and Lamentations, is a cup of wrath. The cup of wrath. So when he speaks of cup, all of the Israeli people would understand it is the cup of wrath. This is what is grieving him. To experience this wrath of God that comes on him. He's saying, God, is there any other way besides this? He knows there's not. He's just crying out. From some of it is from that humanness of him. And so this is where he is. Now, he comes back. He returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. And he says, Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for an hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. Listen, I know the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, brother. You got to strengthen yourself. You've got to stand up strong. Now, Luke adds something here about sleeping, because it's not like they're bored and there's, oh, is he ever going to quit praying? That's not what's going on. Luke tells us that they were worn out from sorrow. So they see him crying, and it grieves them to see their master doing that. And they're overcome with sorrow, because I think the reality that he's going to die, because he just said he's going to be raised again, the reality of all that is beginning to saturate them, and they're thinking, this is not how we thought this thing was going. And they are worn out with sorrow, and so as they huddle to pray, the sorrow overwhelms them, just like it will you at times, right? When you get stressed and you get anxious, what do we like to do? Let's go take a nap. Let me just try and escape from what's going on. This is what's happening here. And he says, look, man, you got to wake up. And you need to pray that you don't fall into temptation. That's your prayer. You focus on that, because the spirit's willing, but your flesh is weak. Simon, we just had that conversation. You say you're going to be bold and you'll follow me, and I believe your spirit wants to, but your flesh is weak. So you pray. And then he says, verse 39, once more he went away and prayed the same thing. So 3 times, just like Paul prayed 3 times for his thorn in the flesh, Jesus prays 3 times for this to be taken from him. Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back again, he found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy and they did not know what to say to him. Returning the 3rd time, he said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Enough, come on, get up. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of the sinners. Rise up and let us go. Here comes the betrayer. So as Jesus finishes the 3rd time of prayer, he begins to hear the soldiers and Judas coming. And so he comes back and he looks at his disciples and he reminds them again, listen, come on, pray that you don't fall into temptation. And what a powerful moment that is there, that I just wanted to share with you this morning. So I'm grateful for Jesus, who chose not to be overcome with that sorrow to the point that he failed, knowing that he would not, but that he was faithful to do that which he did not want to experience, because he knew if he didn't experience it, we would have to. God, what an amazing Savior that we have. Lord bless you guys. I can't wait to share with you tomorrow the garden scene where he gets arrested, and we'll see that, Lord willing, in the morning. Have a great one.